Hello everyone and welcome to today's Wild Rift video. Today I'm going back to the basics when it comes to jungling in Wild Rift. Playing jungle can be a very daunting task with so much information that you need to consume. When's the best time to gank? What lane I should be ganking? When should I be farming? What objectives should I be focusing on? There is so much information that you need to consume, but in this video I'm going to turn your daunting task of playing jungle into an absolute blessing. If this is your first time on the channel, you want the best and most in-depth Wild Rift content out there, consider subscribing. It's completely free and I do a bunch of Wild Rift content from patch rundowns to champion tips and tricks, champion builds, and so much more. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you everything you need to know in the jungle, from beginner champions to beginner jungle routes, how to decide where to gank, and the most important path to victory. First, before we get onto the Rift, we have to decide what champion we're going to be playing, and I'm going to be explaining the different roles and the different champions that you should be picking. First, we have the tanks. These are big frontline champions that usually are the ones who take a lot of damage. You don't necessarily deal as much damage as the other champions, but the main advantage of these champions is you can bring a lot of crowd control in team fights. You're the ones who decide when you want to start a team fight, and you are the main initiators. Champions that I recommend are champions like Amumu and Rammus. Both these two champions can deal quite a bit of damage, but they bring the crowd control that you need for tanks to be the ones to carry your team. Then we have the assassins, the complete opposite to the tanks. These are one-shot machines. They look around for assassinations, they sneak around the map, and they want to dive on top of the enemy backline. These are usually the best type of champions to play in solo queue because they have that crazy 1 versus 9 carry potential. But they can also come with a downside since they are very squishy and can take a lot of damage, so you need to weigh up the team composition that you're playing against to know what to pick. The champions I recommend for assassins are champions like Kha'Zix and Nocturne. Both of them have great backline access and a lot of mobility to be able to get onto the backline much easier. And lastly, we have the bruisers, the best of both worlds. They can have the same sort of tankiness like tanks, but they also can have the same one-shot potential like assassins. Great beginner champions like Vi and Xin Zhao are what I recommend. Vi, of course, with her great ultimate, but she can also do a lot of damage. The same with Xin Zhao. Both these two champions have a lot of mobility and can also get onto the back line. You might not be able to deal as much damage as the assassins, but you have enough consistent damage in longer team fights. Now let's head on to the Rift. To make things simple for you, we're going to split up the jungle into two different sections. We have the top half, which is the blue side of the jungle, and the bottom half, which is the red side of the jungle. The reason why these are called the blue side and the red side is because of the different buffs that you can get. You have the blue sentinel on one side, which can give you ability haste and also restore your mana or energy. And for the red brambleback, you'll be able to deal true damage to jungle camps with your auto attacks. Now, usually what you want to do at the start of a game, you want to full clear your jungle. This means going from one side of the map to the other. But deciding what side of the map you start on really depends on your champion. If you're playing a champion that's very mana hungry, someone like Amumu or Lilia, it's better to start on the blue buff. And if you're a champion that's more focused on auto attacks like Lee Sin and Aatrox, you can start on Krugs and work your way up to the red buff. Full clearing your jungle means that you'll be able to get level 4, and then after that you want to work your way to the river to try and secure the Scuttle Crab. Securing one of the Scuttle Crabs will give you level 5 and give you access to your ultimates. If you're a champion that can clear through the entire jungle and take Scuttle Crab, you'll be able to reach level 5 before any other champion in the game. And this can give you a huge advantage when looking for the first gank setups in the game. But sometimes you might not always be able to secure the Scuttle Crab. That's completely fine. You don't need to risk your life for a Scuttle Crab. All you can do is go back to base, buy your boots, and then try and head towards the other Scuttle Crab. If you lose both, that's completely fine. Just head back to farming and try and get level 5 before you look for your first gank. And when going back to base for the first time, you want to make sure that you head to the side of the jungle where you started off with. So if you started on blue buff and made your way down to the red buff and went towards the bottom Scuttle Crab, when you go back to base, you then want to head up towards the blue buff. So if you gank either the mid lane or the dual lane or the barrel lane, depending on the side of the map you are on, if your gank doesn't work, that's completely fine. You can head back towards the jungle and start farming your jungle camps again. However, if you made your way to the bottom side of the map, you're going to have to walk from your red side of the jungle all the way up to your blue side. So you're actually wasting a lot of valuable time and experience and gold from walking from one side of the map all the way to the other. And this is all about juggling the respawn times of your jungle camps and being as efficient as possible. And just a quick tip as well, when hitting jungle camps, make sure you kite that jungle camp towards the next camp that you're going to head towards. This might not mean a lot to you, but this can actually save valuable seconds during your first jungle clear and can give you that little advantage you need to try and secure the first scuttle crab. But now the question is, how do you decide where to gank and when are the best times to gank during a game? At the start of the game, you want to decide what lane you want to path towards. Now, I mentioned that your blue side and your red side section of your jungle will always stay the same. This is not the same for your lanes. Sometimes your dual lane will be in the bot lane and sometimes they will be in the top lane. But understanding what lane you want to play towards right at the start of the game before you even load in is crucial. So say you want to play towards your dual lane and your dual lane is actually starting in the top side of the map. It might be better for you to start at red buff and then path towards the top lane. And that means you'll be able to get level 5 after securing the scuttle crab. And usually by this time, the dual lane are only level 3. So you can try and look for an early gank on the dual lane to try and get them ahead. But this can work for every single lane. So how do you decide which lane you want to go towards? Well, it's all really down to the champions that they decide to play. So you have to ask yourself, what lane has the best setup potential? Let's take an example where you have a Jinx and a Nautilus in your dual lane, but in the Baron lane, we have a Teemo. Right at the start, I know that the Nautilus has a lot of crowd control and has a lot of engage potential. So I can actually use that to my advantage and play towards the dual lane, since Nautilus is going to have the setup potential to try and follow up from my engage. Whereas on the other side, if I try and gank a Teemo, then it might be a little bit of a struggle. Teemo doesn't have any crowd control, he doesn't have any setup potential. So as a jungler, you're the one that needs to have the setup potential with the crowd control, or it's going to be very difficult to try and lock the enemy champions down. But this is going to change every single game, and it's very difficult to tell you exactly where to go and what to do in each game, and you just have to adapt on the fly. Another thing you can look at is the position of each lane. Which lanes are being pushed underneath your tower and which lanes are your teammates pushing underneath the enemy's tower. If you're pathing towards the dual lane, but you see that your dual lane is pushing underneath the enemy's tower and the enemies are full on HP, you don't want to look for that tower dive. Instead, the mid laner might be pushing underneath your tower and might be pushing the wave. So instead, you want to look for a mid lane gank and try and look for flanks. Flanking is a very important part for jungling, trying to go behind an enemy champion to cut off their path. And this is the same when ganking as well. You never really want to walk in a straight line. You always want to walk at an angle to try and cut their path off. So it makes it harder for them to escape back to their tower. Mid lane is a great example where you can walk around walls, where you can look for flanks and try and get behind enemy champions. Even if they have flash, if you have crowd control to follow up afterwards or a flash by yourself, it makes it easier to try and secure the kill. Another thing you can look at is the health bar of all the champions. Is a champion going to be really low? Is the champion really healthy? And there's actually a setting which can help you with that. There's a setting called Display Minimap Champion Health Bar. And what you'll be able to do is look at the minimap and see the health bar of your team and the enemy's team. This means even if your dual lane is pushing underneath the tower, the enemy champions might be really low on health. And because of that level 5 advantage that you have, you can actually look for a tower dive and secure a kill because you're so far ahead in experience and gold. Or your team might be really low on health. If you have the right place at the right time, maybe the enemies are trying to look for a tower dive and you can counter gank instead. You can wait in the wings, wait in the bush and wait for the tower dive to come in and then use the counter gank to your advantage. Now let's talk about the most important path to victory. As a jungler, you always want to look to farm. Every single time that your jungle camps are up and available, you always want to farm. Ganking is actually not that important in Wild Rift. They can actually give you an advantage, but because jungle camps give you so much bonus gold up until the 11th minute mark, it's a waste of time by not farming. And then when you farm your jungle, when your jungle camps are then not available, that's your time to look for ganks. And then you can look to recall back to base and do the same cycle again. You get so much experience and so much gold from just farming jungle camps alone that you can get a 1,000, 2,000, maybe even 3,000 gold lead in the jungle if the enemy junglers are looking for ganks more and you're just looking to farm. This is a mistake that, in my opinion, most people do. They focus so much on ganking their lanes, helping their team out, not trying to get flamed, instead of focusing the gold on themselves. This is why jungle is one of the strongest roles to play right now in the game, because you get so much bonus gold, you get so much bonus experience just by clearing through your jungle camps. And it's so easy to clear through your jungle camps as well. I spoke about doing a full level 5 jungle clear. After that full clear, if you can't look for a gank, then just go and clear through your whole jungle again. By the time that you cleared through Scuttle Camp, went back to base, bought some items, your jungle camps are going to spawn again. So you just do the same cycle over and over again. And at some point you will look for ganks and you will have time to look for ganks because the jungle camps will not be up. But you wasting time and ganking and having a jungle camp up for a minute or two is just wasting so much experience and so much gold in the long run. So when recalling and coming out of base, always look and see what jungle camps are up and available. You never want to go to the side of the map where there's no jungle camps up. You might be able to get your duo lane ahead, you might get a few kills, but then you have to walk from your red side of the jungle all the way up to your blue side. And that in itself is going to waste a lot of time. There's another thing that junglers like to do, which is called invading. This is where you go into the enemy's jungle and try and take their jungle camps. This in itself can give you a huge amount of value because not only are you gaining gold, but you're actually denying gold and experience away from the enemy's jungle. However, if you're just starting off jungle, I would completely avoid this. I think this is way too high risk and you can easily be caught out if you have no ways of dashing away to safety. However, if you see that the enemy jungler is dead, this can give you an opportunity to quickly walk into the enemy's jungle and see if any of their camps up. And most of the time, if the enemy jungler is dead, you'll be safe to do so. So quick TLDR, always look to farm jungle camps. They're the most efficient and best way to get gold and experience as a jungler. And also, it's the easiest way as well. You don't have to focus on ganks. You don't have to focus on these high level plays. Just farm through the jungle, wait until you get a few levels and a few items, and then you can look to carry when it comes to big objectives. And speaking of objectives, let's quickly talk about jungle objectives and which ones you should be focusing on. Firstly, let's talk about dragons and why I think dragons are a lot weaker than what people think. Most of the time when I watch low elo games or I play in low elo, everyone is so focused around the dragon because they see the numbers, they see they can increase their attack damage, they can increase their armor and mag resist. But these numbers are actually extremely low and not very valuable. For example, the Infernal Drake only gives you 3% attack damage and ability power. Mountain Dragon only gives you 3 plus 2% armor and mag resist. Ocean Dragon only restores 2% of your missing health, and Ice Dragon gives you 7 ability haste. And the really bad thing about dragons as well is even if you take 2 dragons, the numbers do not change. So for example, if you take an Infernal Dragon and a Mountain Dragon, you'll only get 3% attack damage and ability power, and you'll only get 3 plus 2% armor and mag resist. These base numbers do not increase. And I think that's a big thing that people need to understand as well, is that people see these numbers and they think that they're increasing their damage. They think they're increasing their tankiness, but actually the numbers are so tiny that they barely make any difference. The one thing you do need to be careful of with dragons is when one team takes 3 dragons. This means that they'll be able to get the dragon soul. Now, these dragon souls are a lot more impactful than the individual dragons themselves. Infernal Dragon can give you more damage. Mountain Dragon gives you a shield. Ocean Dragons allows you to restore health when you auto attack or use abilities. Or the Ice Dragon can slow enemies and deal true damage. So when the first objective spawns, you always need to think to yourself, do I really need to take this dragon? Is it going to be a really big benefit for my team? As long as you take 1 dragon throughout the game, you will be denying the enemy team from taking the dragon soul. And that in itself is more than enough. You do not need to focus on any other dragons. So even if you miss out on that first dragon, don't risk your life for it. Don't jump over a wall. Don't look for a smite fight. because that 2% difference is going to mean absolutely nothing. Instead, look to try and farm, maybe look to try and invade to try and get ahead and fight for the second or third dragon, or you can instead take the Rift Heralds. Now, even though you can't take tower platons anymore with the Rift Herald, it still gives you an insane amount of value. Being able to take towers early on in Wild Rift actually gives you a huge advantage because it opens up the map so much more. If you're able to take down the mid lane tower, for example, the enemy's mid lane champion can no longer walk up to that minion wave. They have to wait until it gets to the tier 2 tower. And if they do walk up, this is where flanking comes in, which I spoke about a little bit earlier. You can look for flanks, you can look for invades, and because they don't have a tower to fall back to, it makes it so much easier to try and look for these ganks. You can also do the same in the side lane as well, taking a top tower, taking the bottom tower. What this allows you to do is it allows the champion that's in that lane to try and roam and give you a bit of a helping hand. If you take the dual lanes tower, the support can start to roam more, try and make plays, try and look for mid lane plays, because what will happen is that your minions will push underneath the tier 2 tower of enemies. So your champions or your players don't want to walk up to their minions and instead can look to try and roam to mid lane, try and get an advantage, or try and take a tower in the mid lane. So the whole map pressure starts to go into your favor. So in my opinion, you most of the time always want to go for Rift Herald instead of Dragon because it opens up the map so much more and can give you more gold. However, as I mentioned before, every single game is going to be different, and I always like to play towards the objective that has the advantage in that lane. For example, your Baron lane, for example, might be 0-3. The enemy Baron laner might be 3-0. And your Baron laner might be underneath their tower. And the problem is, and this is another thing that junglers do not understand, do not respect more, is that if one of your teammates are stuck underneath the tower farming minions, they are not going to have enough time to roam and help you towards objectives. So if my Baron laner is underneath the tower farming minions, that player is not going to have enough time to roam and help me towards Rift Herald. The enemy Baron laner is going to have the advantage. They're going to have free time to be able to roam and help the jungler towards objectives. So if I go for that Rift Herald when my Baron laner is behind and underneath tower, I am going to lose every single time because the jungler might be there, but also the enemy's Baron laner. So it turns into a 2 versus 1 scenario, which I'm never going to win. Whereas on the other side, my duo lane might both have 1 kills and it might be pushing underneath tower. If again, they've pushed underneath the tower, this gives them free time to roam and go towards the dragon. But of course, you also need to keep track of the enemy jungler as well to see what objective they're doing. If you're seeing that early on, they're focusing towards one objective and you don't have the right capabilities to be able to contest that objective, you can just go towards the other one. For example, you can try and go towards dragon if they're going towards Rift Herald, and you can try and play towards the Dragon Soul. You can also look for a cheeky invade if you want to as well. If they're taking the Rift Herald, you can take Dragon with your team and then try and look to invade in the enemy jungle whilst he's at Rift Herald. Of course, as always, make sure that you do take a little bit more care when invading jungle because it can be very risky. And that's everything I wanted to talk about when it comes to playing jungle in Wild Rift. I think jungle in Wild Rift is actually one of the least popular roles in the game because everyone finds it very daunting and very difficult to understand. But in this video, hopefully you learned a thing or two, and the next time you get autofilled in jungle, you're not going to just call for a remake. You're actually going to play jungle and learn from the tips that I taught you in this video. And what you'll soon become to understand is that jungle is actually a pretty easy role. All you have to do is farm, get bonus gold, get bonus experience, and then you'll have enough items and experience to be able to carry in late game fights. And this is why jungle can be one of the most impactful and one of the best roles to play in the game compared to other roles like solo lane, mid lane, or even the support role as well. You being able to make an impact wherever you want to in the map gives you such a huge advantage. So as always, if you enjoyed the content on this channel, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.